Well, welcome back. Thank you for coming back and listening to this panel. It will be interactive. We do have time at the end for you to ask questions and facilitate a discussion for everyone. So I am Dr. Mandi Sonnenberg. I will be your moderator today. And the format of this session that we came up with was to go ahead and introduce ourselves, 2 minutes or less, so we will not bore you. And then we have a question that each of the panelists is going to answer. It's twofold. So after everyone has introduced themselves, I will come back and ask the panel a question. The first part they'll answer, then we'll come back and answer the second part. And then we have about 15, 20 minutes to open it up to the floor for questions. And if there aren't any questions, which I hope there are, we do have questions we have prepared to answer to continue the conversation about making sure that we are moving forward and being ed tech ready. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I am living currently in Kansas City, Missouri. It's actually hotter here than there. It's been pretty hot there lately. I am the Director of STEAM Projects and Education at St. Teresa's Academy. It's an all-girls school. Prior to that, I was a professor at Rockhurst University. I started the Master's in STEAM Education there. Simultaneously, I started a nonprofit called STEAM Studio, Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Math, to equalize access for STEAM activities across the KC metro area. My background includes being an educator, a principal. I've published a book, and I'm just very honored to be here with you all today. So I'll hand it off.
Very nice. Good morning, everyone. This is Yogesh Makar, and I am the founder and director of CapDeck, an academy for e-learning. So about myself, I've been an engineer, an operations manager, a supply chain leader, so everything but education. That's what my journey was of 25 years. So my real interest and why I came and switched my career completely into education was based on my own personal experience about 5 to 6 years ago when I was teaching my own son. He is a gifted student in mathematics. So we struggled a lot finding good online resources or even in books to teach kids on how to jump their levels ahead. So we thought, and I thought basically, if it is that much hard for us who are into well-placed positions and can afford expensive education, if we are struggling that much, how difficult it would be for millions of kids. And originally I'm coming from India, as you can tell that, and coming from India, having seen the diversity and need of education there, and living in US for 25 years, I took a turn to switch completely into education, and that's where I have been in the last 4 years. So that's a little bit about myself, why I came to this journey, and then we'll discuss more about it as we proceed through our discussion. So thank you.
Good morning, folks. My name is Adel Lalo. I'm the Senior Principal Product Manager at Western Governors University. If you're not familiar with Western Governors, we are a fully online, competency-based institution, currently serving about 130, 140,000 active students. I've been with that company for about 12 years now, and growing up, I would tell you I would be a lot of things, but in education would not be one of those. I was actually down the path of studying architecture when I stumbled into this job. 12 years later, still here. I'll keep it short. I do want to let you know I'll probably be blind by the end of this panel discussion because these lights are very bright. So I'll pass it on.
Good morning. It's an honor to be with this distinguished panel today and with all of you who have survived a major pandemic and still let education continue throughout the last 1 year, 3 months. My name is Lucy Mariappa. I'm the Chief Information Officer at International Leadership of Texas. We are a charter school system at 20 campuses with 22,000 students all across the state of Texas. What makes us different is we are an innovative organization with leadership and trilingual curriculum with English, Spanish, and Chinese. About me, previously to IL Texas, I worked for top technology companies, led their global product development for 32 countries, and then worked as a consultant for Fortune 500 companies. And 12 years ago, I had a health scare and then started wondering, what am I doing with my life? And around that time, somebody pursued me in terms of coming into education sector because there was a huge gap in technology. And that's when I decided 12 years ago to get into education sector and work for a large school district. I feel very fortunate to have that 360-degree view and expertise in terms of technology and to be able to make an impact using that expertise in the education sector. Thank you.
Good morning, and my name is Priscilla Laus-Cox. I am the founder and CEO of Summa Consulting LLC, which is an environmental management and sustainability company. Prior to founding Summa, I was a military officer. I actually served this great country as a public health officer for over 20 years. I also enjoyed teaching and education and also making sure that we do know that we can too make a difference when it comes to the environment in which we live. In addition to that, I'm also the National Director of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, which is located in Washington, D.C. We're 101 years old, and we do have the ability to make sure that our community is also helping others. In doing so, I am here with the panel because of the educational reach. We have over 125,000 members who are in various roles across the international sector in which we actually deliver education to them to actually helping other people excel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, as you can see, we all have different backgrounds and career paths, so we hope that as we're answering our questions that we reach each of you in a different way. We actually have met a couple times on Zoom, and when we were discussing how to manage this panel, we wanted to make sure that we were able to share successes and some ideas that we have found to be very helpful in using ed tech and lessons learned. So hopefully you'll see that theme as we go through the questions. The first question is, we've all been through the pandemic. And what did we learn? What did we do? And what were some of our successes? As we were going through the pandemic and using ed tech. And I'll go ahead and start. This is my first year at St. Teresa's. My background is infusing the design thinking model when teaching educators how to use technology, when trying to solve some problems. And so in that role, as we were in the pandemic and slowly coming out of it, we didn't have a process for when there were issues with technology or teachers resisting technology, as Dr. Jansen remarked on, and Dr. Landau definitely said, being mad. Our teachers were very mad. They were mad about all this technology being poured on them with little training and instruction. So one of the things that we did was we wanted them to be part of the solution. So we trained them on the design thinking process that we use, which is, you have a challenge, you interpret that challenge, you make a plan, you build and test it, you evolve it, then you pitch and share out. So we actually had them take a quick survey and we put them on different tracks. We didn't want them to come in and learn about the technology, one size fits all. So they were able to pick their track on how we were going to train them to use that technology. If they were a math teacher or a business teacher, if they were a coach, if they were a staff member. We migrated to Microsoft Teams, so it was all new for everybody. And we found that to be really successful because, as we all know, we learn in different ways at different speeds, and we gave them the time to go ahead and learn that technology at their speed and their ability and their interests, because the staff member in charge of security is going to use Teams quite differently than the science teacher on the third floor. So I found that to be very successful. We got great feedback, and we continued doing that throughout the year. And we also are going to do that this summer before they come back to school. So that was just one of our successes.
Very nice. So I'll tell you from our own experience what we have done differently to survive through the pandemic and how to make a stronger impact on students and teachers. So what we did, what was different was in two aspects. One aspect was for students and second was for the teachers. But whatever we did, we just kept one thing in the mind. Keep it down to the basics. Keep your technology, that whatever we are providing to school, so simple to access that people can use it effectively. And the second aspect of this was, which was designed mainly for teachers, was we all know that this generation, the younger students, older students, this generation, they are coming up, they are being raised with technology in their hands. So their ability to handle tech is far advanced compared to the teachers who have been raised in a slightly different environment. Even myself, I struggle sometimes going from one tech platform to another tech platform. So what we kept as a very, very basic fundamental was that our job is to make tech accessible for teachers as well as for students. So what we did was we paired someone from our company to the teacher wherever we are implementing this technology to a school, that how do you use it effectively. We taught them very down to the basics, and of course we had designed our infrastructure in a way that you just have one single platform to access everything. That is what helped us tremendously to survive through this COVID, because it was an academy for online learning, so we wanted to make sure that people do get access to the online. Now, the important part was how do you train people? That is where we did something different. Was we found a school, we trained their teachers, we found 2 or 3 super users in that school who understands technology a little bit better compared to the others, and they were the guys or the girls who were the go-to people if any question from any faculty within that school comes up. So that model we tried, it was very successful, it was very helpful. So that is, I will definitely say we did something different to help fight this challenge.
Well, at Western Governors, it was a little different. Since its founding in 1997 by the 19 founding governors, we have been fully remote, fully online, competency-based. So when the pandemic hit, we were not built for the pandemic, but we were prepared for it. Our students are 100% off campus anyways. We don't have a campus. We have a few offices. So like I said, we did not have that same problem. The problem we did have is that we have multiple offices. We have a total staff of close to 8,000 people, again, mostly remote. But we faced the challenge of sending everyone home, everyone working remotely. And I think you sometimes don't appreciate the in-office environment until you're not in the office anymore. So we did run into a few challenges there, but to the previously mentioned solutions, we are a Microsoft shop right now. We use Teams for communications. We're just now reopening our offices to come back, but our students have not been impacted very much at all. Having said that, since we do have 130, 140,000 active students, we did find that while their school progress might not be impacted, their personal lives were impacted in many ways. So our challenge was to ensure that we are reaching out and making accommodations for our students whenever necessary in order for them to be able to deal with the pandemic in their personal lives. That was one of the major outreaches that we have done. But as far as delivery of learning to our students, nothing changed there when the pandemic started for us.
So I joined IL Texas as a brand new CIO on March 16th, 2020. The first day of the national shutdown. That was my first day on the job. 2 days before that, on March 13th, I got called into a cabinet meeting by Mr. Thorson, who's the chief of staff. He's here with us today. And we were figuring out, what are we going to do with this apparent pandemic? What does it mean? We were trying to brainstorm it. And our CEO and superintendent, Mr. Eddie Conger, made it very clear to us. Not educating students is not an option. Having lost generation is not an option. So we decided on that call that we are going to flip to virtual school, and we'll do it in 5 days. Yes, 5 days. As a prospective new employee, I cheered because this was courageous leadership. Courageous leadership is what is required when we are hit with a plan we may have, but when we are hit on the gut. As I was, celebrating this courageous leadership, it took me 20 seconds to then realize, as a CIO, virtual means me. I've got to make that happen. And I've not even met my team. Don't know how many people are in my team. What are the strengths? And I was in Atlanta. And my new organization was in Texas. So as I was flying on the plane, I was actually building the technology plan. Talk about building the plane while you're flying it. That's what we went through. So we had 5 days, my team and I had 5 days to make the entire virtual flip in terms of technology happen. So as part of that, one of the main things that we wanted to do, or we had to do, was turn the entire organization into one-to-one device for 20,000 students. So we had to procure, roll out 20,000 students, devices to 20,000 students all across the big state of Texas. And then get our teachers in terms of launching their classroom, train them, get their technology ready, help them understand and set up the technology to make that happen. All this while making sure that the students as well as the staff and the entire platform was safe and secure, because that is most important. So yes, on 23rd, the 6th day, 20,000 students and 2,200 staff members flipped to virtual school, and our students started attending virtual school or remote instruction. And we went to complete virtual as an organization. We went from a brick and mortar school system to a technology company delivering education overnight. So yes, we had rolled this out. Now, how do we support it? What about grandma out there who has never touched computer? What about kindergartner Susie who has never touched computer? What do? We have to sustain this, because technology knowledge should not stand in the way of learning. I truly believe that. So in 2 days, we rolled out technology help desk and a call center with audio and video. Meaning, if grandma calls and tells, I don't know what's happening, all she needs to do is turn the computer, and we technology folks got from there. Then the next week, we started rolling out cybersecurity protocols and procedures to keep our classrooms, teachers, and students safe. Because the last thing as a mom I want is to, I want to ensure the safety and security of my kids. Also, as a mom and a CIO, I want to ensure the safety and security of my 22,000 kids. That's very important. And then the ease in the adoption of the users. So we started looking into single sign-on, and the entire landscape was on single sign-on. Now the students who have got 50 applications just have to sign in once. So every week we rolled in innovative solutions to make this successful. And this was praised by the then Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, who came to visit us and was very happy with the successes that we had and what we had done in terms of making the virtual school happen. And from then onwards, we were also awarded with CIO 100 awards, and I think we are the only K-12 organization out there right next to IBM and all the big technology companies. So in short, courageous leadership. Let's make sure our skill, expertise, and everything that we need at the end of the day for the student success to happen is all come together, and it's done in a very collaborative way, including teachers, the leadership, and the students and the parents. Thank you.
And for me, it had a whole different or similar experience like Lucy. I walked in as the National Strategic Director for a nonprofit organization in which we go out into the community and we help others. Helping others in a number of facets. We have adopted schools. We have those extracurricular community activities that are in the non-traditional educational movement. So for us, it was very, very different in the fact that we have generationals of particular women who have been in the organization for the longest. Oldest members as far as 102 years old that are still around and kicking. So how do you get them to get email, still be able to have community service meetings, and et cetera? How can we help the adopted schools that we have adopted to assist those educators in educating, their children? Because, it's not only just about education in the classroom, it's education outside the classroom as well. So how do we continue doing community conscious, action-oriented work, as a couple of the speakers were saying earlier? Courageous leadership. My international president, Valerie Hollingsworth Baker, she had a very aggressive plan that was to get our members to be able to still communicate with user-friendly data systems. So in our plan, we automatically had a way that we were going to do it, but the pandemic actually helped us to be a little bit more assertive in our plan, a little bit speeded up a little bit. Was it rocky? Absolutely. Was there complaining? Absolutely. Did we get through it? Absolutely. We went through, we decided to do a team of regions and to help exactly with our older members who are not so much good with technology to be able to learn just the basics. And we chose systems that fit the needs of our organizations. We did not look to the left, we did not look to the right. We looked at what we were currently doing and what makes sense for our organizations. The other thing that was very important that we did was to make sure not only in communication, but also in the efficiency as well. Because although we have basics of technology, we want to make sure that it's efficient for us and what we're trying to do. We also took tasks and KPIs that made sense and redid them because the earlier ones were before pandemic, obviously. So now we have a whole nother set of everything that we have to think about. Also, the safety was #1 priority of going out into public because we could not. So how can we be as effective? How can we be as motivated? How can we be motivated, not only motivated, but also making sure that we still did what we promised that we would do in our mission statement? So we had to relook at that as well. Once we figured that out, we also went ahead and tried to look at innovative ways for the future and do partnerships. We're partnership with Google right now, which is an awesome way to help learn the basics of technology, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Google Docs, to introduce that to the organization and making sure that not only us, that we pass this information out to the public as well and get them educated and help educators as well. Because again, we're a community conscious, action-oriented group. We believe in action, believe in transformation, and we also believe in innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the second part of the question that we want to address in the next couple minutes before we open it up to the floor. One of the silver linings of the pandemic is that we all went through this together, the whole world. We learned how it feels to be incredibly fearful and vulnerable. And in thinking about next steps, the second piece of the question is, what can be done differently with technology to be future ready? And that's going to look different for every organization. So I can just share what my organization is doing in terms of educators. We really want to make sure that we have a plan B if there is another strain, a variant, and it affects us and we have to go remote again. We want to take away that fear or that feeling of loss of control. We want to make sure that the teachers feel as though, and the students and the parents, that they have some control, and there is a plan in place if this happens. Experiential learning is very prevalent in our Plan B. How can we infuse that, whether there's another pandemic or not? How can we have our students be future ready? With technology, that comes through, as Dr. Landau said this morning, through experiential learning. So we're looking at different pathways for our students and teachers to be more creative. And lastly, I'll just say this, the screen time has been very hard on our students in particular, their mental health. And so we're looking at creative ways to get them off technology and doing more things experiential and getting outside, even if there is a pandemic again. How can we help them with their mental health more than anything and take away some of the screen time that they are constantly having? So these are plans that we are working on this summer, professional development. We're letting teachers choose what pathway they want to research and look at. So we have a plan in place that addresses mental health, making sure our students are future ready with technology, and that our teachers feel as though they are competent and not frustrated as they were when they came back last fall.
Very nice. So to answer this question of what can we do differently going forward so that our education system is future ready, I will take ourselves back 1 year back, before pandemic. So the awareness of online education, if we go beyond US, beyond Canada, beyond all of these geographies who are a little bit advanced in their development status. So the awareness of online education was not that high, what we have seen awareness right now. So now people are aware, people are using some of the very basic stuff. And of course, that will self-propel people to learn what is online education, how to use tools and technologies, and the basic stuff will be out of the way after 1 year or maybe after 2 years. To be prepared for our future in online education, what we need to do differently is also that start thinking now how the future of education will be when kids when they want to use advanced learning on any subject so that they can push themselves beyond their limits. what about our teachers, so that they don't have to monitor 50 kids in a classroom that, are you attending my class or not? They should be prepared a little bit more in their classroom so that they can do that through technology. They can give them advanced assessments. They can use technology to monitor the performance of 100 kids at once. And in many cases, we are still doing it actually through our academy. But can that be made so easy so that every educator anywhere in the globe can use it with just as simply as we use Facebook today? That will be the place where we want to be ready for future. And I think that's the direction we want to go.
Look, I worry a little bit because I think a lot of institutions had to quickly stand up a solution 12 months ago, a little more than 12 months ago. And because of that, I hope that one of the things we have all learned collectively is that online education is not in-person education on video, right? It's a totally different brand of education. To the tune of that I think a lot of people might have gotten a bad taste in their mouth about online education because we had to stand up things so quickly, right? Having said all of that, well, in addition to that, I think because a lot of people had to rush to a solution, I'm afraid that not everyone has created scalability, right? So we still have teachers and professors afraid of technologies. Again, because we rushed it, I'm not sure that we have properly thought through what it is going to take to scale this education. Because there will be students out there that don't ever want to come back to class. I mean, I have a 9-year-old that just finished. She was online for most of last year. She does not want to go back. She's going back, but she doesn't want to. She gets an extra 15 minutes of sleep, so why would she? So I do think there will be people, students, that do not want to go back. And I think we as an industry need to be prepared for that. We need to educate the educators. We need to make sure our systems are scalable. Sure, you can deliver 1,000 assessments, but can you deliver 100,000 assessments in the same day on the same infrastructure? I also am a little worried that, well, along those same lines, from a technology perspective, remember, building it is mostly the cheap part. Maintaining it and upgrading it as we go along is usually the most expensive part, the most vigorous part of the process. So again, from a Western Governor's perspective, we're set up for success there, but my worry for the industry is that online education in general will get a bad rep because we had to rush it.
Like Adele, I'm a warrior in this topic as well. In terms of technology adoption in K-12, even before the pandemic, we were nowhere close to be where we needed to be. And that's one of the main reasons I came into education sector as well. There's a huge gap in terms of how technology is adopted in K-12 as an industry itself. Now, when the pandemic came, what that did was it zoomed in to the technology status in each of our organization. How good or bad you were was exposed. And here, now the public is asking you, why are you not ready? Why can you not be ready? Right? We all were put into that shoes where the CEOs and superintendents had to come up and answer, oh, we have not taken care of that in terms of technology. And they were asked, why not? A pandemic was required for us to think about technology seriously. Now that we are at the end, hopefully end of the pandemic, what we need to do is learn from our lessons that we went through in the last 13 months. And I worry sometimes that will be just put in the back burner and we lead our lives again like as if nothing happened. We can't let that happen. So in terms of if we want to be future ready, start with the basics. How are we? We have to look into our basic technology infrastructure. It's not just about rolling an application, rolling an online class. It's not about that. For that to happen, we have to have our basic technology infrastructure, our networks, our infrastructure, our systems, the integration between the systems. In most of our organizations, we have siloed systems. They're not integrated. So basic infrastructure, the operation, the integration of our systems, everything has to come together to create the foundational pieces for us to then be able to build on and scale for our application level, which is EdTech. So yes, this topic might be, are we ready in terms of EdTech? But my question to you all is, are we ready in terms of technology as a whole? EdTech just sits on top. There's a basic infrastructure piece, there's a basic readiness in terms of skills and expertise, and a basic readiness in terms of all this integrated so that when we want to roll out solutions, we can easily. Otherwise, without having these foundational pieces, we're not going to get there. So I want each of us to go back and think about what is our current landscape? Where do we want to get to? Do the gap analysis in terms of where are we missing and start thinking about how can we bridge it together. We have to be technology ready because we can't be waiting for another pandemic to again expose us, and then the same public will ask, what did you learn, what did you do, and why are we here again? So being technology future ready starts from right now, starts from working on it, getting the right skilled and expertise people into our K-12 environment. We have not taken technology seriously. It's not just a bunch of people. You need to have this skills and expertise who will then get to understand and plan, okay, how should this actually be done? A lot of K-12 organization compare themselves to another K-12 organization. Okay, great, but that's not all. We have to think about what is the best industry practice out there, whether corporate, K-12, public sector. We have to get to be the best, not just the next door neighbor. Thank you.
And to wrap it up, I would say that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, basically. I have 6 steps that I wanted to share into lessons learned from both my organization, the one that I actually am the CEO of, and also the National Strategic Director job that I do for my nonprofit. One of the things we did was define our, step 1, define our strategic framework. Framework for anything should be embedded into yourselves as well as the members of your organization. It should be in everything that you do. Then you have build a plan. Now, how you build a plan is you get all those key stakeholders that Lucy is talking about and what Adele is talking about. You get them all together, and you pretty much pick their brains on what they know. Because guess what? They're the ones that are at the grassroots of your organization. They know exactly what works and what doesn't work. I had a couple of times, even here, while I'm at this conference, I had 2 of my employees actually called me and told me that the plan that we had before wasn't working, and I told them to go back to the drawing board. You have to be able to entrust the people that you have to do that job, to do their job. Then we have defining those KPIs. You take what all of this is together. It's one of the oldest management systems that we have. It is to keep us honest and to keep us successful in what we actually say we're going to do. So with those KPIs, they could be very simple. They don't have to be very complex. It could be something that, it should be something that everybody should understand. And on top of that, you establish the strategic rhythm. What types of reporting systems are you going to do? How many times a month are you going to check on this? You don't wait to the last minute, kind of like how most of us are feeling now, to where, oh, I'm going to get to that. Oh, we can do this later. And then it becomes el photo when you try to roll it out. Then you also have to implement consistent, simple strategy reports. So when you finish with these different reports every monthly, there should be a roll-up to that, to saying, okay, let's really sit back down and have a strategic talk as to, is this really working for our organization? And the neighboring things that Lucy has talked about and I mentioned earlier about keeping that frontal roll to making sure that everything is not cookie cutter in your organization. It sounds great in theory that other people are doing other things, but does that really work for the organization that you have? And you have to meet people where they are and be very honest and open about what you have in front of you. And sometimes I think we lose sight of that. It's like what Adele said earlier as far as rushing. Once we find that out, all of a sudden now, we want to rush and do something, which it does not work at all. You should be able to articulate your plan and be able to have flexibility in your plan. Because just because you plan down something doesn't mean that you can't go back and readjust it. And that's what strategies and strategic plans actually do. It's a living, breathing document. So don't get so caught up into, oh my gosh, it's not like this. Well, things could happen. That's why you have those people there that are in the grassroots or a grassroots part of your organization to help you see where you need to shift left or right. And then you need to be that particular leader, have, courageous, self-perseverance, and to say, you know what, that's not working quite as well. I think I might want to try a different way, because there's definitely more than one way of doing something. And actually have respect into when you do get something or report there's something that you don't want to hear, you probably want to listen to it anyway, because you might learn something, just like how we did in this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. How many of us have strategic plans we haven't looked at in a while? It seems like it's just a checklist. Oh, I have a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, and yeah, I'll kind of look at it yearly. So that's a great point to make. We have about 10 minutes left, so we would love to open it up to the floor. If you have a question for the group, for us, we would love to hear what that question is and facilitate a conversation. So we actually have a mic for you. So if you will please stand if you have a question, and then we'll have one of our wonderful people come give you that mic.
Hi, I have a question, I think primarily for the fifth speaker. What in fact are your KPIs? What are the specific metrics that you are using to gauge learning during the pandemic? Because, as we know, I teach at the University of Washington, and when we went online, all of a sudden, we had people telling us from the frats and such, it's the Wild West of cheating, people are searching for answers, open book, open note, oh my gosh. How are you gauging that students are actually learning, or what exactly are you measuring?
I'm sorry, was that for me? Oh, okay. I'm like, oh wow, really, Lucy? For us, for our organization, what we did was, again, we kept them very, very, very simple. It was something like 98% of our members would be engaged or not engaged into the technology system that we put out. And how we did it, we built in a system to where we can actually get the clicks as to how many courses that they're clicking on, how difficult it was, and we had all this great background information with analytics that actually could tell like where a person got stumped on, how far did they finish through the module, and et cetera. So we took that information and we briefed that every month or so just to see how we're doing with that particular module or with that particular technology. Then we also put out a survey as well after the course is done to say, hey, what do you think about this course? Was it difficult for you to get in? If it did, can you elaborate on how difficult was it for you to move through the module, and particularly which one? We took that feedback and then we looked at what we had and then we made adjustments from there. If the adjustments didn't work, we basically just went ahead to a more simpler system, because we try to weigh out those who are not technology sound into those who are a little bit more. And then we have like the baseline where we call our experts. And we built a team around that to where, again, a call desk was made. We have like consultants that are throughout each region, and that's the way how we pretty much did that. And that's just with one example.
All right, someone else?
And there are ways.
Oh, go ahead.
Just wanted to add to that. You said it's the Wild West of cheating. It can be. There are a lot of very good and creative ways to secure that delivery of learning, and it's a long discussion, but we can talk if you'd like. What's that? Oh, there are a lot of companies in that industry.
Okay. Who was next, I think?
Yep.
Right here in the white.
Hi, okay, so my name is Stephanie, and I'm the founder and CEO of Matrix Tutors, and we are a NetSec startup. So this is actually an incredible conversation that I just got to experience, so thank you so much for sharing everything. So right now we are in the process of hologramming teachers into the homes of students, and we are creating that gap or the bridge in between what is going from in-person learning to going into that virtual learning. And the pandemic was the perfect scenario that told us, hey, we're here, we're in the future, and technology is what we need to go looking forward, but now how do we do a solution that is not gonna affect so much the emotional intelligence and emotional factor as well of students, and the fact that they're more socially separated, right? Okay, so something that made me think about was, what if students are born into that world? They won't know any better. The ones that are really getting hit in terms of like their mental health are those that knew better from before or knew that actual interaction. So a solution that I believe that could be a solution to that is the interaction of what Kristen Jensen, she spoke earlier today, is that virtual reality is something that we're also looking ahead in about like 10 years down the road. That's a monster. But could it be that the actual solution is to incorporate sensory experience in virtual reality? Because what makes the emotions is that senses. So, you know, I definitely did want to hear your perspective upon that and what would be the solution to grab that. I think first speaker, you did mention a little bit more about that mental health aspect. So, you know, if I can hear your perspective, I think that I would really appreciate that.
Sure, and you know, you hit such an important point of using technology effectively. It's the whole body experience, you know, and what we've seen is students on the other side of a screen with their screens off, they're blacked out, they're not engaged, they have checked out, they're cheating, they're not happy. If they are engaged, the teacher's trying to get in as much as they can through that screen, and it's a sit and get. It's not an experience for them. So you're exactly right. It's hard to have that emotional tie with a student that you can't physically be with. And so I think that's really important. We're gonna have to find a way to make the emotional experience just as important as the academic experience. And we're gonna have to keep moving forward and trying different things and educating our teachers on why this is incredibly important. Because we have an epidemic of mental health issues right now because of the pandemic. And we have to address those before we can help our students be future ready. So I do like the idea of the hologram of the teacher being able to come into the student's environment if they want to stay at home and learn. You know, our students are our clients. And I think sometimes we forget that as teachers. So we have to make sure we're catering to their needs and interests and abilities. So I really appreciate that comment. I don't know if that answers your question or if anyone else wants to.
Well, I was just gonna, am I on? I never know if I'm on. The same warning from earlier. I'm a huge proponent of let's go explore, build new stuff, right? My only worry is, does that raise prices? Is it accessible? Is it sustainable long term? Having said that, I think it's incredible that, you know, companies like yours sounds like are out there and trying to hologram people into a room. I mean, that's awesome. That's just fun. I will always caution us, let's make sure while we're doing it, that while we're doing it for fun, it is also scalable and accessible to people. Because once it's not accessible, it doesn't matter how cool it is.
I will also add one more point to that. Accessibility, being in front of students who are our ultimate clients, along with the teachers, all of those are fantastic. But in our experience, what we found as the single most important thing, what kids want, what students want, is the presence of teacher is good, engagement is good, but they also want content, what they are learning, how differently they are learning, and is that learning, the education that they are getting, can they apply to advance their careers, advance their skills, to get into higher competitive exams, clear those exams. So no matter how cool we make it, if the technology doesn't deliver the content along with the presence of the human being in a hologram way, there will be very few takers to adopt it. And that has been one of our strongest learning being in EdTech in last 20 years. Parents are so much involved in their kids' education that they watch, they monitor how are their kids learning. And they will spend any amount of money to do that. I'll give you an example that we came across a client, and I won't put the geography or names in the picture, but that client was willing to spend 4 times of his annual earning towards his kid's education so that his kid could get into an engineering program. So there are people like that too. So they value content more than anything else.
I want to play with your technology. We got to talk. That sounds awesome.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Time for one more, I believe, if you want to pass it off to the lady behind you.
Good morning, afternoon. I don't know. I'm from East Coast, so it's afternoon my time. But I want to, first of all, say kudos to you all for getting through the pandemic in the situations that you've described. It's very, very intriguing to me as a former charter school leader to look at where we've come in just a year in education, where it's forced us to be. One of the things that I wanted to kind of speak to, and I guess it sort of tags along with the comment that the young lady just mentioned, and that is, are we collaborating with virtual education entities that have existed for 15, 20 years to find out how are they doing it and what are their best practices? Because I know that they definitely have a very large market across our country, across our world, and it's very, very successful, and I've worked with them. And so I know that there are many strategies that they have, and I think sometimes in education we get in silos and we try to figure it out all on our own as if it's brand new, but sometimes I think it's better to have a thought or a think tank, if you will, of experts so that we can all come together and see who's been doing the work already and what are some of their lessons learned and best practices that they can share.
Very valid point.
I think Lucy.
Okay. Thank you for the question. So one of the biggest void we have between education and edtech products is there is a gap of products and actually having that work well with education. Meaning, a lot of corporate products are designed and they just dummy it down or water it down and say education, like Google, education, something else in education, but it's not actually designed for education. It's just a sideline product. They just take the main corporate product and then give a little bit of features and say for education. And a lot of the times it does not work for us. Now on the virtual education piece, the product that exists, yes, that many of those products are designed in a way thinking that this is already virtual education, this is our market. So there is a huge market of in-person education where they have not thought about the real life scenario, what happens in the classroom in an in-person situation. So there is that wide gap between education, edtech, technology products, and virtual education. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so what we at IL Texas, what we also did is rolled out remote instruction, which is our virtual school, and it performed awesome. Again, these kind of education programs are also reliant on funding, even though it is charter. So there's so much that needs to be thought about because our public education systems are also limiting the funding for virtual charter school systems. In Texas, that has already happened in terms of going away from it. So what has to happen is, yes, we need to talk about funding. We need to talk about charter schools collaborating with each other to understand and to learn. And then the other step is the void that we talked about to be all brought together to collaborate and support. But that's an excellent question because that's where we have a lot of work to do. It's not been done.
And for me, just to tag on, it's one of those things that you have to, again, you have to go back and see where you want to be in the next couple of years in your plan. The call that I was just mentioning about earlier was myself, actually, for my organization, which I'm the CEO of. I literally had to really think about what was the main impact and what was my mission. What do I really want to do? What message do I want to put out? Once I had that, my team came back and told me the company that we were looking at, because we did search and shop around, who's doing this better than what we could do, because right now we're like slow as a snail. So, but the information, especially about climate change, is really important right now. So how can I make an impact? So we found two companies, and what they called and told me was that the company was not in alignment with my values and what I wanted. And I said, well, go back to the drawing board. I trust you guys to go back and find two other companies that can actually align with what the company is going to do, what the message we want to partake, and then even if we just start with one course, you know, maybe we don't do a whole suite of everything. Just started with something that's basic that I can get out, and then that will attract to being more and help us to get that funding that we need for the software to go ahead and actually build for more courses into a nice virtual academy. So we're in the process right now of doing that, but yes, we did do that. And as far as for my nonprofit, the same exact thing. We're shopping around because we found out that during our information from our key stakeholders in our KPI, that in order for us to get to where we want to go, we can't do it by ourselves because we're not traditionally ed tech or a virtual school per se. So we will have to take the advice from other people, which they have, and they're drawing up plans for us right now.
I think the short answer to your question is no, there's not enough collaboration. That's where we are right now. There's some, but there's nowhere near enough. Because as you said, we have all failed 1,000 times. We don't need to each fail 1,000 times, right? Yeah.
Well, thank you all.